from the Jacket Jones Shredder Studio and beautiful CCM at the University of Cincinnati, it's the Dennis Daniels Show! Tonight's guest, voice actor Crispin Freeman. Plus John Pokemon and the Dennis Daniels Show Band! And now, here is your host. He is the 2009 Bearcast Innovator of the Year, Dennis Daniels! Boys and girls and children of all ages, I welcome you once again to the hottest Bearcast show segment in the history of the world in 1995, but it's 2010, so it's kind of redundant. I am talking, of course, of the Dennis Daniels Show. I am your host, the leader of the All-Taste Explosion Brigade. I know we use that joke with Wendy Lee, but it's dual applicable for this one. And BearcastRadio.com's innovator of 2009, Dennis Daniel. All right, calm down. I know. I'm upset too, I'm upset, John. You know why?
Why are you upset, Den?
The Miz is WWE champion.
Oh, man.
Can you believe that?
How do you sleep at night?
I don't know. The Miz is WWE champion. And he's got his little sister, Alex Riley, and his girlfriend, Michael Cole.
Oh, man.
We were watching it this Monday, and it was all from Michael Cole. Oh, it's The Miz. He did this. He did that. He had a ham sandwich this morning. Michael Cole has kind of that bromance thing for The Miz. But, folks, give it up. Once again, he is the Sarah's Victoria to my Alucard, the boss, the Mon, the John Pokemon.
JPZ.
Oh my gosh, if this is your first time here, welcome. John, go get him some chips, some little assorted cashews. Anyway, folks, today on the show, we have got none other than voice actor Crispin Freeman.
Crispy
Crisp. Like Flavor Flav.
Krispy Kreme.
Krispy Kreme, yeah. Yeah, a bunch of fangirls are going, I don't make fun of Crispin's name, he's awesome! We always like to decorate the studio with all this cool Bearcast stuff. John, you have the camera up?
I sure don't, then.
Why don't you have the camera up?
Because I don't have a Wi-Fi signal.
Why did I bring all this stuff?
I asked you that as we were leaving.
And Zach's in the way. Zach's in the way of it.
Yeah, Zach. Yeah. You jerk.
It's a few things that I've had Crispin Freeman sign for me. I met Crispin Freeman in an Anime Punch in Columbus in 2006, so he was really nice, and the only thing I knew him from was Hideki off Chobits. And if you don't know who Hideki is, if you've ever seen Chobits, it's about this kid. He's basically a farm boy.
Really?
And that's my nickname for Hideki, farm boy.
Farm boy. Okay.
And he gets rejected from this college university.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes into the city to get, to go to a college preparation school, like Cincinnati State.
Oh,
sick burn.
Cincinnati State. Whoa, kids.
Burn.
Oh, that was a nasty burn.
That was.
Anyway, in the city, I guess it's like in the near future, like Hill Valley in 2015, which
thousands of years
into the future. There are these things, they're called persicoms, and they're like robot people.
Mm.
And they
like Cylons.
But cuter and sometimes hotter.
Oh,
and
all right.
While walking home one night, he finds this one. It's called Chi. I know.
Just one with the goat ears?
Goat ears.
Goat ears.
Right here with the goat ears?
Those aren't goat ears. Those are like cable horns or something. They're like cable things. Yeah, open them up.
They look more like ears.
Minus the goat ears.
Yeah, that would be on the goat.
We'll ask Crispin Freeman if he thinks they're goat ears. Yep. Okay.
Alrighty, fair enough.
So he takes it home and it's heavy as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes to turn it on, and you won't believe where the switch is for the power on for this thing.
I don't even want to know.
It's where my little sister likes to refer to as the no-no box.
Oh, okay. Alrighty.
I know. I did not write the show.
Alrighty.
So he becomes, I guess, smitten with her, loving with her. I don't know.
Smitten? You'll be smitten for kitten mittens.
What?
You don't watch Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
No,
do
I
you?
don't.
I'll have to show you that clip. Any of our listeners who watch that show know what I'm talking about.
So anywho, it's about this relationship between man and machine. It's like the Terminator.
Except the Terminator is more badass.
I don't know. You're going to have to argue that with Crispin Freeman,
Alrighty. Well, I'd like to see him argue that with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's see who would win that debate.
Oh my gosh. And another character he's known for is, and cover your ears because they're going to scream when we say this, Alucard from Hellsing.
Oh, okay.
Now, Hellsing is this anime. It's set in World War II. You might like it. There's Nazi fighting.
Oh, okay.
And it's about this, it has this man named Alucard, and he is a vampire.
Oh, okay. Gotcha,
But not a vampire, not like Twilight or True Blood or
Vampire Diaries.
Vampire Diaries. Yeah. I mean, we're talking a kick-ass vampire. He can go out in the sunlight. If he gets
that just totally goes. Yeah, that's not a vampire.
He's a kick-ass vampire.
No, he's not a vampire.
He did the voice.
Like Edward Cullen, a kick-ass vampire.
He did the voice. I would not be surprised if he just started doing the voice when we came on and he called you, John, called you a punk, and called Zach Mueller back here a punk. And I'm praying this happens.
I would be totally offended.
He would trash talk you.
I would absolutely lose it.
It would be Crane Redux.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, but it's pretty. I've not seen a lot of it, but it's about vampires and the struggle for life and fighting in the war. A lot of anime nowadays are based around the war. Like this one called Hitalia Allied Forces. Mm-hmm. I guess, and they're people, and they're named after countries. Like there's a Russia kid, a America kid, a China kid.
America.
Yeah. In America.
Coming again to save the...
Yeah. McDonald's. Taco Bell.
But he's also done some American stuff.
Oh, okay. All right.
He's best known as Electro in the Spectacular Spider-Man.
That's respectable. This guy has definitely just gained some respect in my book. For sure.
I was personally shocked to hear he was doing Electro.
Yeah.
Shocked. Electro.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Don't quit your day job.
Yeah. My guest is a very accomplished voice actor, best known for doing Alucard from Hellsing, Kyon from Haruhi Suzumiya. We're just going down the Haruhi Suzumiya line.
Yeah, I know. Jeez.
Togusa from Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, Holland Novak from Eureka 7, Toga in Revolutionary Girl Utina, Zelgadis Greywords from Slayers, which Eric Stewart was gallery. So He worked with Eric Stewart. So without further ado, let's give it up. He's a great man. I'm honored to have him on the show. It is the one, the only Mr. Crispin Freeman! Crispin, thank you so much, and welcome to the Dennis Daniel Show.
Well, thank you for having me.
I hope you weren't offended by all the trash talk my brother and my friend here are doing.
No.
It's just straight up no.
No. Well, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good. But anyway, we thank you for being on. We've gotten tons of requests after the Wendy Lee interview to have you on, and it's just it's an honor. I've been watching you for many years, and it's finally nice to get you on here and talk to you.
You bet. It's good to be here.
All right. So let's go ahead and without further ado and get right down to the nitty-gritty. Our first question is, what got you interested in voice acting?
What got me interested in voice acting? Well, I guess what got me interested in voice acting was the fact that I was interested in animation. I had always loved Japanese animation when I was a kid, and I'd sort of lost touch with it when I went off to college. And then after, actually I think it was during grad school when I was in New York, I would do summer theater festivals up in Massachusetts, and a friend of mine caught me watching some anime and said, hey, I work on the English dubs of this stuff in New York. Would you be interested in doing it? And my initial response was, no way, the dubs suck. I don't have anything to do with them. But then I realized that all the shows that I had been introduced to when I was young were dubbed, the sort of Robotech and Voltron and Speed Racer. And so I thought, well, you know what, let me see if I can get in there, because I like to make a good introduction for this art form that I love. I'd like to introduce it to other people well. So I called them up and said, sure, put me in touch with the studio. So I whipped together a demo tape for them, and they called me in for an audition. and it was for the Slayers. It was a little bit part in the Slayers called Prince Hallis, and then they were recasting the part of Zelgadis. And I came into audition for that and got cast as Zelgadis, and it sort of took off from there.
We had Eric Stewart on the show in January, who was Gowry, so I assumed you worked with him and Lisa Ortiz and Veronica Taylor.
I did work with them, although we all record separately, so we would sort of see each other when we passed in and out of the studio. But I did become friends with them, and especially Lisa and I used to hang out a lot, and we'd go to conventions together sometimes.
Now, I read on your Wikipedia page that you have earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Williams College, majoring in theater and minoring in computer science, and then you went on to earn a Master of Fine Arts degree from Columbia University in acting, and then you went on to perform on Broadway, which is on Broadway, and even locally here at the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park. What was that like?
Those were all great experiences. I was very fortunate that when I got out of grad school, I was able to audition for a production of Arthur Miller's A View from the Bridge, and I got cast as the understudy to the romantic lead, and I got to play some other small characters in the show. And it started off as a small production at the Roundabout, but then it eventually became a full-fledged Broadway production at the Neil Simon Theater. And so I did that for the better part of a year. And then after that, I went to the American Repertory Theater in Cambridge, and just outside of Boston, and did a show there. Actually, they show a number of times with Anna Devere Smith, who is a well-known actress here in Los Angeles, and I believe she's still teaching at Stanford, I think. So I worked with her, and then the Cincinnati Playhouse in the Park was actually interesting. I went and did two shows there. One, I think the first time I was cast there was for A Christmas Carol. I was playing young Ebenezer Scrooge, which was a lot of fun. And then I was cast again in a show called Shakespeare's R&J, which is basically a version of Romeo and Juliet with four boys playing all the parts.
Oh, that must have been quite an experience.
Yep. Actually, that's how I first met Liam O'Brien, who also does voice acting with me. That's how I actually introduced him to the world of voice acting, as we did that show together, and he found out I was working as a voice actor. And he said, "Oh, can I do that too?" I said, "Sure, I'll introduce you to the studio." So, and off he went and started his own voice acting career.
BearcastRadio.com. This is the Dennis Daniels Show. We've got Crispin Freeman on the air. I also know that you come from a family who likes to major in acting, and I know your sister Cassidy Freeman stars in Smallville. So, tell us a little bit about that.
That she does. My sister got cast in the 8th season of Smallville. This was the season where the actor playing Lex Luthor, I guess, left the show, and so they needed someone to take over Luthor Corporation, and they created a character called Tess Mercer, who is sort of a combination of Mercy Graves and Miss Tessmacher, and they sort of made a hybrid character, and they cast my sister to play her. So for season 8, 9, and now for the final season 10 of Smallville, my sister has been playing Tess Mercer on Smallville.
Oh, it's ending already?
Yep, this is the final season.
Wow.
And not many shows get to 10 seasons. Buffy only made it to 7.
Yeah, tell our show hardly made it to 10 seasons. But we're still going strong. Now, what hobbies do you have outside of voice acting?
Well, I do a lot of presentations on mythology. That's a certain obsession of mine. I give academic presentations on mythological storytelling and animation. So I spend a lot of my time researching comparative religions and looking at how mythology informs our storytelling and how the different mythologies in America and Japan have lead to Americans writing about superheroes, where the Japanese tend to write about giant robots. So most of my time I'm sort of geeking out, studying storytelling and mythology to see how they work together and developing presentations either for academic conferences or for the classes that I teach here in Los Angeles, which I also sometimes give around the world. I've presented internationally on this topic, from Frankfurt, Germany, to Australia, to New Zealand, to universities all around the U.S. So usually my iPod tends to be filled with lectures of cool ideas that I'm trying to learn about. When I'm not doing that, obviously I like playing with sound toys. That's one of the perks of being a voice actor, is you get to play with cool sound toys. And as a sort of former hacker, I like to work on my computer a lot. So that's probably most of the hobbies that I do. I also like sleep.
Who doesn't like sleep
And breathing.
But I too like editing with my sound toys. I'm an electronic media major in about less than a week, so we like to get my hands dirty with all these cool audio things. What kind of audio toys do you like to tinker with?
Well, most of the time I'm dealing with voiceover recording technology and doing post stuff. So usually I'm playing with really nice, fancy voiceover microphones, or sometimes I'll find really cool plugins that let me do stuff, especially in terms of like noise reduction stuff. Or I think I may get this really cool plugin that lets me do all sorts of different voice prints for different production styles, either for voiceover or for singing or whatnot. Just because I like sound, I like playing with sound. I used to do sound design in the theater. When I wouldn't get cast in a show, I'd offer to sound design it, so I would sound design theatrical shows. Then I started working with my brother doing some sound design for his theater shows and for his short films. And I also do sound design, or I did all the sound design for all of my wife's films when she was studying animation at animation school. So she would do all the animation, and I would do all the audio, and we were sort of a little post-production studio together.
We're broadcasting from the College Conservatory of Music, CCM, here at Cincinnati, Ohio. And there are a lot of people, they want to know how they cut their teeth in the voicing industry or the theater or major industry. Do you have any advice?
Well, cutting your teeth as a theater major is pretty easy. I think you just got to take theater classes and decide you're going to major in theater. But in terms of breaking into the business of being a voice actor, I started out just as an actor. I did not even think of voice acting as a career until it sort of came up naturally through my interests and what fascinated me. So I was on track to becoming a theatrical actor, and I was thinking of doing movies and films and whatnot, and then this animation thing came up, and it really struck a chord with me, and I realized that I was really more interested in animation than just about anything else. So that's why I followed that path. But what I found of most of the people who are in the voice acting community, the vast majority of them have theater experience, because it allows you to think quickly on your feet. It allows you to have, if you have lots of theater training, you usually have better vocal chops, so you can have better control of your vocal instrument. And most of the people in voiceover either come from the theater or they come from radio, because they're used to performing on the microphone for hours and hours and days and weeks and months. So usually my first advice to anyone who wants to become a voice actor is you got to become an actor first. You've got to learn how to portray a character believably under fictional circumstances, which everyone thinks they can do. But it's more of a challenge than you might think. It's more of a challenge than the media would have you believe. The media would have you believe that people just sort of get in front of a camera and look completely natural. But if you've ever tried to take a holiday photo, you know it's really tough to look good on camera. So I think it's about becoming an actor and becoming skilled at the craft of acting, and then learning how to express yourself only through your voice, not having your face or your body to express with as well.
Now, when we talked with Wendy Lee about her, her journey through voice acting, she told us that she, that she'd sometimes pick up an extra job because the voice acting was not supporting her fully, or, did you by chance have to pick up a job when you were acting and trying to get all this?
Well, luckily I was in a position where I did not need to, so I have never had to try to hold a second job while I was working as an actor or as a voice actor. But that is one of the challenges, and that's why a lot of people work food service, because you can have very flexible hours, and you tend to work off normal 9-to-5 hours, because especially as a voice actor, you sort of just have to be available 9 to 5 every weekday, because you never know when something's going to come, and they may need you tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And they sort of expect you to be available for that. And if you're not, it makes it sort of challenging. That's not necessarily the case when you're doing theater or if you're doing film, although they do expect you to be available for auditions. But with voiceover, it's very much a sense of, we sort of need you this afternoon. Can you come? And the one who says, yes, I can, tends to be the one who books the job.
Yes. Now, I was looking again at your Wikipedia page, and, I mean, it would be wrong to assume that you just do anime, because I have looked, and I have actually watched some of the other shows you're in, and one that pops into my mind is the Spectacular Spider-Man, in which you played the role of Electro. And I was kind of shocked. Shocked, Electro. It's a joke there. What was it like developing Electro, and how did it differ from voicing an anime?
Well, one of the biggest differences is that we record the audio before the animation gets produced. In Japan, all the animation is done first, whether it's being done in English or in Japanese. The animation is done first, and then the Japanese or the English-speaking actors will then dub their performance to picture. But that's not the way the American animation industry works. The American animation industry records the voice actors first and then animates to that voice actor's performance. So one of the big things is they're recording me first, and I don't have to look at a screen to match lip flap. The other thing is that Spider-Man was recorded sort of radio show style. Most, if not all, of the actors are in the room at the same time. We all stand up at our mics, and we all perform, and we get to work off of each other in the moment most of the time. Sometimes there's schedule problems, and we can't get everybody in the room at the same time, but for the most part, you are acting off of your scene partner, a live scene partner, whereas in anime, every actor is recorded separately, and so you may be working off your scene partner if they recorded before you, but if they didn't, you're acting against silence. So then you have to lean on the director very hard to make sure that the performance works with everyone else. It's true, I do a lot more than just anime. Anime just happened to be my entry point into the world of voice acting. After anime, I started doing a lot of video game work, and then I got into the domestic animation scene doing Electro from Spider-Man, who was a lot of fun, mostly because they took a slightly different track with Electro. He doesn't just have electrical shock powers, but the idea is that the electricity that's coursing through his body is actually affecting his brain. It's driving him insane. And that was a really nice sort of psychological hook to be able to work with when playing Electro. It doesn't just make him some sort of diabolical villain with superpowers, but it makes him this sort of tortured character who just doesn't know how to handle his own strength. After that, I did a little bit part on Wolverine and the X-Men, and I'm now working on Young Justice, the new DC animated show with all the sidekicks from the Justice League.
Yeah, it just debuted on the 26th of November, and you play...
I play Speedy. He's not the Red Arrow yet, but
Red Arrow.
Speedy is Green Arrow's sidekick, which is ironic because you would think Speedy would be Flash's sidekick, but Flash's sidekick is Kid Flash. You'd think that maybe Green Arrow's sidekick would be named Robin because of Robin Hood, but no, that would be Batman, whose sidekick is Robin. It gets a little confusing. But anyway, I play Speedy, who's Green Arrow's sidekick, and if you saw the first episode, I'm not so pleased with being treated like a little kid. My token line is "Don't call us sidekicks." As I understand in the entire mythos of the DC universe, Speedy does eventually grow up to become Red Arrow.
Now, back to Spider-Man, I'm looking at the cast here, and you work with an extensive cast. Jeff Bennett, Steve Bloom, who would be Spike Spiegel in Bebop, Robert Englund, a.k.a. Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street, Bill Flaggerbeck, a.k.a. Patrick Star from SpongeBob. I mean, you worked with a lot of unique people. And did you ever by chance get to, maybe meet the man himself, Stan Lee?
Stan did not come to the recording session. It would be interesting. It would be fun to have him as a voice cameo, but he was never there. But yes, it is fun when you're playing a villain because you tend to meet a lot of the other villains, and they tend to be really interesting characters. Robert Englund, who played Freddy Krueger, was a really nice guy and turns out has extensive theater history and background and knowledge. So we ended up geeking about British theater for most of the recording session. Peter McNichol was playing Doc Octopus, and that was a lot of fun because he's sort of Doc Ock in the show is sort of my older father figure. As Electro, I am his young protege, and so we would end up talking a lot. And sometimes I would be goofy and stand behind him and sort of put my arms and legs in the air like I was his octopus arms and help him, with the character if he needed it. But he was a great guy, and we had a lot of fun together.
BearcastRadio.com. This is the Dennis Daniels Show. We've got Crispin Freeman on the air. Is there a character that you've always wanted to do, or from another show maybe that you didn't get a chance to do?
Yeah, actually, my entire impetus to start as a voice actor was because of a certain show that I watched that was near and dear to my heart, and it was an anime show called The Vision of Escaflowne. And there was a character in that show by the name of Alan Shazar, and I really wanted to play Alan Shazar. I thought I was really right for him. And so I got into the anime industry ostensibly to build up my resume so that I could audition for the part. And when I found out that it was going into production, I actually contacted the LA studio and said, "Hey, can you send it out to New York and we can dub it here?" But unfortunately, they didn't listen to me. They decided to send it off to Canada, and so I didn't get to work on it. But luckily, I got to come to L.A. and work with that same studio later on some really wonderful shows like Wolf's Rain and Ghost in the Shell. So that was really cool. But yeah, Ellen Shazar was a part I'd always wanted to play. I also there's an anime film called Tokyo Godfathers, which is about, it's sort of a modern retelling of the old Western, the Three Godfathers, and except it's set in Tokyo, modern day, and it's three homeless people trying to take care of a baby instead of three cowboys. And one of these three homeless people is a very tall, very deep voice transvestite by the name of Hana, which means flower, and she's hilarious. And I would love to play Hana in Tokyo Godfathers.
Well, Funimation's, they're getting a lot of these shows that are, losing their licensing, and they're redubbing them, and maybe we can use this to have them do a redub of Escaflowne. So if you all are listening, this guy, he's got the chops. He could do it. What do you think, John? Think he could do it?
For sure.
Yeah. Now, I also know that you were a part of the critically acclaimed Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. What was it like voicing for a movie that was based on a video game?
Well, it's interesting. The thing that usually... that's an interesting question. The thing about working on Advent Children is that it was Square Enix, which does all the Final Fantasy games, and they have their certain way that they like to go about doing the dubs of their properties. So they are very exacting and very precise about what they want in their performances. So we certainly took our time to get exactly the read that they wanted for each of the characters. We didn't really... I wasn't in the original Final Fantasy VII video game, and we didn't really talk about the game that much. We sort of dealt with the movie as its own thing. So we recorded the movie itself, and it was pretty... My character is sort of paired up with Reno, so Rude and Reno are sort of this funny couple that work together through the show, through the movie. And I did not really get to see much of the rest of the movie until they did the premiere here in L.A., and they had lines around the block to get in, and so we all sat down and watched the movie, and it was only then that I discovered that Rude and Reno were sort of the comic relief of the film, that they're the ones who keep getting the sort of crap beat out of them, and it's actually quite funny. And I remember leaning over to Quentin, who played Reno, and I said, "Quentin, we're funny. We're like Mutt and Jeff up there. This is great." So it was quite enjoyable doing that. And then they did the extended version, and so they called us back to do some more voice recording for that, and then there's been other video games since then with the Young Turks, which is who Rude and Reno belong to, that group. And so I've come back every once in a while to do a little more recording for Rude in different video games where he shows up.
Now, are there any roles that you weren't happy with or just not really like doing?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a hard thing. As an actor, you look back on work that you've done, especially if it's a long time ago, and I know I look back at stuff and go, "Oh, I could have done that so much better now." But, people like the performances. I mean, the one character that I'm very popular for, even to this day, is Zelgadis from the Slayers. And I look back, and I originally recorded him 13 years ago. And I look back at those performances, and they're still very good, but I think, oh, I could fix that, or I could fix this. But then you get into sort of George Lucas syndrome, where you go back and you fix it so much you break it. So if people love it and they still appreciate it, that's great. And luckily, if that stuff is really popular, it tends to come back. We actually just did a new season of The Slayers 10 years after we did the first 3 seasons, Evolution and Revolution, and so I got to come back and play Zelgadis again, which is fantastic.
Now, did you apply those changes you wanted to do from the original Slayers into the new Slayers?
Well, it's not so much that I changed the character, because I certainly don't want to do that, and that's always a big concern. It's like, wow, can I still sound the way I sounded 13 years ago? I mean, or am I just going to sound different? Because I want to make sure the character stays consistent. It's more that I have more acting nuance now. I'm more comfortable in the booth. I'm more comfortable in my skin. I have a better feel of the character. I've been playing him for 3 seasons, so I know what he's going to do and where he's going to go. And so it's more having that confidence in the beginning would have been nice, but it's not like I'm going to rewrite the character. The character worked great the way he was. I want to make it even better.
I personally enjoyed Zelgadis. Zelgadis.
Zelgadis.
I'll learn that one day. I've just been learning new words today, like baccalaureate competencies. Now, I personally think that, once you got it, you got it. Because with Eric Stewart, he did some Brock Stingers for us. And, he still sounded as awesome and as great as he did 10 years ago. And I heard the original Zelgadis from 10 years ago and the new one. And I got to say, you nailed it. You never lost it. It was always there. You just had to believe in yourself. And I think it was really good.
Well, thank you.
Now, if I don't mention this, the fans will really, really kill me. You got to voice Kyon in the Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. I've known you've done a couple. You're doing these cool, calm characters. What was it like doing that compared to, with your sidekick as this loud, outgoing girl who has the powers of God? Was it a challenge to develop Kyon's personality on the show?
Well, in some ways, Kyon fits into one of the archetypes that I play a lot, and it's sort of the doesn't suffer fools archetype, meaning that he's actually not that far in character style from Zelgadis. Zelgadis is sort of hanging out with these people who can do all this crazy stuff, but he really can't deal with all the silly things they do, and it really sort of bores him, and he'd really just like to be quiet and contemplative. And Kyon, in a way, is sort of this slightly a little bit grouchy because he feels like he's lost his fantasy world and nothing fantastical ever happens, and so he's become a little sort of, I don't know, I wouldn't say cynical, but he's been a little sort of down to earth about stuff, and suddenly all this craziness falls in his lap. So for Kyon, the challenge is not so much in terms of like developing some crazy voice or anything. The challenge with Kyon is to make him sound completely natural, unassuming, laid back when you're dealing and recording under very exacting conditions. You're standing stock still in front of a microphone all by yourself with headphones on your head, staring at a screen, trying to match lip flap, going beep, 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 doing this over and over and over again, and it has to sound like he's just sitting there chatting with you over coffee. That's the biggest challenge, and those characters are actually more challenging from an acting perspective than the sort of really big, histrionic, dramatic characters, because as the character gets of a certain size, you get to sort of chew the scenery a bit and throw your weight around. But when you have to just come off like you're sitting and having an intimate conversation with someone and ignore the fact that I've got miles and miles of lip flap that I have to match, that's where you really got to have your acting chops sharp, and that actually takes a lot of sort of mental concentration. So as opposed to something like Alucard, which in Hellsing, Alucard is very taxing vocally. I have to be very prepared physically in order to play Alucard and get everything I want out of him vocally. But with Kyon, it's not that I have to prepare as much vocally, I have to prepare mentally. I have to be in that mental space and be really on top of things so that I can come off sounding completely laid back and natural.
Well, I think you just captured it pretty good, because, it just seems like, he doesn't care. He just, he's cool. He just goes with whatever Suzumiya's doing. Now, we asked this with Wendy Lee, and I guess this is about the second season of Haruhi Suzumiya. What is your take on working on what is now known as the Endless 8? And for those who don't know, the Endless 8 are the first 8 episodes in Season 2, but apparently their storylines, are repeating again and again and again, but the characters are switching around. And we just want to, what is your take on recording the Endless 8?
Well, I think the Endless 8, from a story perspective, was really sort of fascinating in a way. I knew the Endless 8 was coming, that we were going to be doing 8 episodes that basically had the same plot, and we were going to be caught in this time loop. That's the sort of premise of those episodes. The characters are caught in a time loop, and they have to figure out how to get out of it. And to do 8 episodes over and over like that, initially I thought they were just going to be repeated. But it turns out that each episode is different from the other ones. There's different scenes in each plot sequence that are emphasized. We're always wearing different costumes. So they reanimated every episode. So it's not like they saved any money by repeating 8 episodes. Not at all. I mean, they did all of that. So it's interesting that we're going to go, okay, can we look at these 8 stories, the same story 8 times, and wring different things out of it every time? But from an actor's perspective, it was quite taxing. One of the most taxing things about doing the Endless 8 was not necessarily that we had to do the performance 8 times. I mean, that's taxing enough as it is. But the challenge is that we're doing the performance and we're dubbing it in English. So we'll come to a scene, and someone will have adapted it into English because, let's say, this line has 6 flaps. And then we come to, the second scene, the next episode, and that same scene comes up, but because it's from a different angle, now it only has 4 flaps. Oh, okay. So then do we go back to the first episode and have to change the line back there, or do we do this line here? And then we'll sort that out, and then we'll get to the third episode, and now it's like 5 flaps. So trying to keep track of all the different versions in between all the different episodes was a little brain warping. I really sort of felt bad for the director and the writer to try to keep any kind of consistency from episode to episode about making sure that we're all linking them all up together. So I earned my keep, I think, on those episodes, and so did the director and the writer.
Why are they stuck in the continuous storyline? Did someone break the flux capacitor?
No, the idea is that the show, these 8 episodes take place over the last 2 weeks of summer vacation, and the idea is that Haruhi is not completely satisfied, that summer ends and she's not satisfied, so rather than starting school, she rewinds 2 weeks and plays those 2 weeks over again, hoping to find this thing that will satisfy her, that will feel like she's actually had a satisfying summer vacation. Of course, she doesn't know this consciously. It's happening on her subconscious level, and so everyone in the show is sort of subject to her whims, and they have to try to figure out what's going to satisfy Haruhi, which is sort of the premise of the show in general, what's going to satisfy Haruhi.
She repeats the last 2 weeks of summer because she doesn't want summer to end. Well, Haruhi, welcome to 95% of every school student. Hello. John, you never wanted summer to end, right?
Absolutely not.
Why is that?
Because particularly in my opinion, school is not the greatest thing.
I'll tell you what, why don't you go get some powers like Haruhi, and then you can repeat this last 2 weeks of summer forever and ever and ever.
Well, I wouldn't want to rewind 2 weeks right now simply because, we're almost done with the quarter. I want to be done.
I don't know. Maybe they should have just gone some plutonium and made the 1.21 gigawatts to get back to the present time. I don't know. A Back to the Future joke. I got to do these things, BearcastRadio.com. This is the Dennis Daniels Show. We got Crispin Freeman on the air. And you were talking about this earlier. We talked about Alucard from Hellsing and Ultimate Helsing, which I guess
it's actually
is
pronounced Alucard. There's no Q in there.
Alucard. Alucard?
Yes.
It's Dracula spelled backwards. We know that.
Right. There's no Q in Dracula, so there's probably no Q.
Alucard. It looks like Alucard. Maybe the eye and the brain aren't making the connection. I don't know. Now, I heard from episodes, I heard from convention videos, he's got a deep voice. He's got like that deep Undertaker, rest in peace voice. How did you develop that?
Well, that I actually lean on my operatic training. I trained as a legit operatic baritone, and so as I developed my voice for singing opera, we discovered that, or me and my vocal coach discovered that even though I'm a baritone, which means that my voice tends to like to stay in a sort of lyric baritone, Mozart baritone place, I do happen to have this extremely low extension on my voice, which goes down to a low E, which most full, legit basses would kill for. Now, that low extension of my voice is not powerful enough for me to sing down there. I can't be a bass on stage. But when working on the microphone, I can go down into that low area and use it quite well close up on the microphone. So that was what I'm leaning on when I'm playing Alucard, which is why I have to be so physically prepared, because it's much more sort of vocally gymnastic having to play Alucard. Not only because he has to be sort of deep and low and rumbly, but then he has to rip people's heads off. And when ripping people's heads off, you tend to do a lot of screaming. And when you scream, your vocal cords tend to tighten up, and then it's hard to be as relaxed as you want to be to get those low tones again. So I really have to be sort of in tip-top shape when I go in to record Alucard, or else I won't make it through the recording session.
Have you ever had a voice that you had to do that was just so, I mean, besides Alucard, that was just so stressful and extensive on the vocal cords?
Yeah, actually, I learned my lesson on that. There was actually a character I was asked to play. It was in a show called Photon. It was an anime called Photon, and it was the Galactic Commander, or the Galactic Emperor, rather. The Galactic Emperor, who was a villain, and they wanted him to have a really crazy, rough voice, and they said, it'll only be like 15 minutes. So I came up with this crazy voice for the Galactic Emperor. And I thought, well, I only have to do that for 15 minutes, right? 2 hours later, as I'm sort of bleeding from my throat, I realized that maybe that wasn't such a good idea. So that taught me a valuable lesson. I was not going to do any voice that I couldn't actually maintain for at least 2 hours. Luckily, I learned how to do that Galactic Emperor voice without hurting myself, and I ended up using it on a video game on the Battle for Middle-earth, which is a real-time strategy game. And if you play the forces of Mordor, there's a goblin commander who walks you through the game, and I play the voice of that goblin commander. And the guys at EA, when they hired me, they brought me in to the studio, and they say, okay, we loved your audition with that crazy voice. Can you really sustain that? And I said, yes, I can do it for 2 hours. Then you have to send me home so I can rest. And they said, great, cool, we'll get it done in 2 hours. And so we did.
Hearing that voice, man, it just took me back to when Pat Fraley trash-talked me as Krang. And it was crazy. Wendy Lee talked to us about all these different kinds of techniques to, keep the voice, moist and prevent it from screeching or getting shattered. Do you have any techniques you use to keep your voice at top strength?
Yeah, my vocal training. My learning how to sing legitimately, i.e. opera or legit Broadway singing, teaches you very good vocal technique habits. It teaches you how to use your voice without straining it and how to balance air pressure and space in the back of your throat to get tone, enough tone to fill an entire opera house without blowing your voice out. So once you learn that coordination, then it's sort of like just going to the gym on a regular basis to keep it up. So every time I go in to do a gig or an audition, as I'm driving in the car, I'm doing my little vocal warm-ups to just get me warmed up and ready to go. And because I've been doing it now for so long, I can slip into that groove quite easily. If I were to stop doing that for, 6 months, it would probably take me a while to get back into the groove of it. But I don't have any other special things that I necessarily do. It's always good to drink water. Green apples are good for lip smacks because it gets rid of saliva in your mouth. But I try to steer away from, doing tea and things like that because it starts to be crutches. I will do that if I'm in trouble. If for some reason I've come down with a cold or something and I absolutely need something to help me, but I do it very sparingly. I'll do it just for whatever 2 hours I need to record or 4 hours I need to record, and then I go straight home and go to sleep, because that's really the best way that I know to get over any roughness in my voice is to sleep and rest.
In October of last year, you hosted 2 virtual town hall meetings on Vocal.com where you took questions from the fans, read your favorite scary story, did some requests for voices. Is there any chance that we can catch a 3rd town hall on Vocal?
Yeah, I've just been so slammed with things that I haven't had time to work on the vocal stuff recently. And I was thinking of doing a scary story, but then Halloween slipped past me before I had time. I was extremely busy this year doing my latest mythology presentation and doing all the research for it, and so I've sort of been slammed with that. And I have so many different projects that I'm working now that I just haven't taken the time to set up another vocal chat. And usually I like to end it with some sort of story. So maybe I'm not sure if I'll have time before the end of the year, but hopefully sometime early next year I can see if I can organize some sort of vocal chat for everybody.
You'll have to tell us so we can plug it on our website at alltastexplosion.com.
Sure.
Now, where would I be able to catch one of your lectures on mythology? Because that sounds pretty amazing that you're doing all this research into mythology and how it relates to storytelling. Where would I be able to catch one of those? Do you have a podcast maybe we could download and watch?
Well, right now the lectures I only perform them either at the school that I teach at here in Los Angeles, or every year there is an event in Minneapolis at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. They hold an academic conference called Schoolgirls in Mobile Suits, where a bunch of different industry people and academics and other people come and talk about anime and manga from all sorts of different angles. And so I'm one of the regular speakers there. I've presented there for 5 years now. So I'll be presenting a new presentation there in September. Their conference happens at the end of September every year in Minneapolis. I also sometimes will present at different universities around the country, and I always keep that information updated on my website. It's always best to go to my website. There's an Animé Mythology section of my website where you can see where I'll be performing my thing next. A podcast may be a possibility in the future. It won't be the full presentation because my presentations are full-out performances. They're more like stand-up comedy routines with slides and video. and they usually run more than an hour long. So, but I am planning on putting them into book format, so that will probably be the easiest way to get them out. And I'm playing with the idea of doing them in some sort of documentary format, but there's a lot of licensing rights that need to be organized in order to make that happen. So that would be much longer down the pike. So if you can't make it to LA to check it out, best to probably check out my book when I get it done.
Oh, so I assume you'll have more information on CrispinFreeman.com.
That is the best place to find out information about me. I tried to make it as easy as possible.
And we'll have a link to your site, of course, on the All Taste Explosion website at alltasteexplosion.com. BearcastRadio.com. This is the Dennis Daniels Show. We have got Crispin Freeman, voice actor extraordinaire. John, I think we're going to go ahead and bust out the listener questions. All right. Listener questions. Our first question is from Orchik. And this is a request. Could you ask Crispin Freeman to say in Kyon's voice that he loves Haruhi?
Sure. Hey, Haruhi, I think I love you.
Back off there, Kyon. She's mine. I don't know. You can have her. She's crazy like a fox. Okay, so I guess that's our one voice request for the day, because we tried doing that with Wendy, and she almost blew her vocal cords out. We don't want to do that to you, Crispin. So,
well, thank you.
Okay, another question from Kyon is cool. Do you know about any upcoming Haruhi-related projects?
Well, obviously the big upcoming Haruhi project that everyone would love to know about, including me, is the Haruhi movie, The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya. I was at the premiere that they did in L.A. Me and Wendy were both there, which was really nice, and so I got to see the movie. But I have not heard anything about us dubbing it into English. I assume we will probably do it at some point, but I have no information about it, so that is on the horizon.
She disappeared. Why did she disappear? So it's just one day, poof, gone. That's it. Finito.
That's sort of the mystery of the movie.
Well, I don't want to give out too much, so we'll keep it shh. So they're hoping that they get to dub it, because I think it'd be a great success with the just seeing how Haruhi has had such a big impact on the anime industry.
It's true. I have a feeling we will probably do it at some point, but I have no information about it yet.
Okay, our next question comes from Yuki Pones 00. What future dubs do you think you'd want to be a part of?
Future dubs. I will say that since I've gotten into the industry, it's been harder and harder for me to keep track of the new stuff that's coming up over the horizon, usually because I'm just so busy working on what's right in front of my face. So I'm not sure which shows that are coming up that I'd like to work on. I guess I would love to work on the Borrowers, the Ariete Borrowers that Miyazaki just did, if they bring that over, which I'm sure they will. I'd love to work on the dub for that, but I don't know what other anime shows that are coming over that I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, why don't we just expand it out from anime? Kind of anything but anime. That's kind of redundant because we don't even know what's coming out yet. So, any other projects? Anything you might like to work on? Are there any fantasy projects you like to work on?
Fantasy projects.
By that I mean things you think should get some kind of voicing thing, and you'd love to work on it.
Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know. Well, I guess if I had my druthers, there's a lot of amazing French comic books, things like Sky Doll and Belladonna and things that are really sort of astounding pieces of artwork and really wonderful, edgy stories. And I would love to see those animated, but there's no American animation studio that would probably touch them because they're too mature in their storytelling themes. So, but that's my obsession. I love storytelling, mature storytelling in animation, where stuff is really at stake. So I'd love to work on any of those if they were animated. It would have to be. I imagine the Japanese would end up having to animate them because I don't know any other country or any other culture that would be okay with sort of R-rated animation except Japan.
Well, one of those hentai studios could pick it up.
Well, these aren't hentai. I mean, that's when the problem is that when you say mature, people immediately assume that it's pornographic, and that's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm talking about is stuff like Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell is a very mature show. It's cyber cops in Tokyo, but people get killed, and stuff is at stake, and emotions run high. And if you tried to pitch that to an American animation studio, they'd run screaming. They just wouldn't know what to do with it. Because their demographic is 12 and younger. But the demographic of most of the anime that I like and most of the characters that I play is 12 and older, where there's emotion, where there's romance, where someone's at stake. I remember Brad Bird, the director of The Incredibles, was criticized on The Incredibles because the young boy Dash gets shot at by the bad guys. They were very angry at Brad because how could he have a little boy in his film get shot at? And I kind of go, well, he's a superhero. Something has to be at stake, or we don't care. So that's my challenge. Is I like stuff that's more mature, and something like the French comics are more mature in that way. They just have more freedom to tell whatever story they want to. They're not limited to the nursery in the way that a lot of American animation and comics are.
Yes, and another question from Yuki Pons. What was your favorite part of playing Hideki Motosuwa from Chobits?
I loved playing Hideki, mostly because when I first got to L.A., I was cast a lot as the heavy. The first character I played was Alucard, and from then on I started playing sort of deep, dark, scary characters, or sort of silent brooders who just sort of glowered at you. And then Hideki came along, and they cast me as Hideki. He was very upbeat and very optimistic and very sincere. And I tend to be very sincere myself, so I identified with him a lot. It was hilarious because he's completely technically inept, and I'm a hacker, so that was fun too, just, having to act that I'm stupid with computers. But that was a lot of fun. And also, I liked working on Chobits, especially because, and this is something that's missing in American animation, Chobits is a Clamp show, and Clamp is an all-female animation and manga studio. And that's really wonderful. I really love having the female point of view when writing and creating animated and comic book stories, and I think it's been lacking in America for far too long. So I love working on shoujo, on girls' anime stuff, because I think there should be more of it. And I like playing the sort of sincere hero in it. I mean, the sort of Chobits is a mature show. Chobits gets very mature. About halfway through, stuff really comes to a head emotionally. And characters, you find out about relationships between characters that have been hidden through most of the show that suddenly come out in the open and have really big implications to how things can move forward. And the final confrontation that Hideki has is quite heartbreaking at the end of it. So I think Chobits is great.
I remember one episode, it was where Hideki had to try to get Cheese some underpants, and he couldn't ask the landlord because that was a scary thought, and he was having this hard time trying to go in there and buy the pants without being considered a pervert. So he sends Chi to do it, and of course Chi was Momo, and they go and they get the wrong thing. So in the end, he has to do what he's been trying to avoid the entire time, and only to find out when he gets home and gets them, Chi's going, Hideki's a pervert. And that was hilarious when I saw that. I think that was well done. That was just hilarious. So.
Yeah. Situation comedy.
Oh, situation. Jeez. Oh, jeez. I always wonder if Chi ran on Windows or Mac.
I doubt either.
Yeah. Okay, our next question is from Discrimino13. You voiced Togusa in Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex Second Gig, and Solid State Society. I was wondering, how did you land that role, and are you a fan of the Ghost in the Shell in general?
Yes, I am a fan of Ghost in the Shell in general. I remember I saw the first Ghost in the Shell movie that was sort of right at the peak of my sort of anime fandom when I was really getting back into anime. That was one of the big films that I saw, and it was right also at the very beginning of when I started working in anime. And I was very excited to audition for it. It was brought through the same studio that had done Cowboy Bebop, and I had worked with them on a couple of different shows, and so they called me in to audition for Togusa. And I was thrilled to audition for Togusa and quite happy when I landed the job. We did the Standalone Complex series, which is fantastic. And then we also did Innocence, Ghost in the Shell 2. I was able to play Togusa in that film as well. So it's been wonderful. It's also fun to just do a cop show. Just do a sort of straightforward cop show where I don't have to necessarily do anything crazy with my voice. I can just be a straightforward actor in the moment. It's also a pleasure working off of Mary Elizabeth McGlynn as the Major and Richard Epcar as Bato. There's a reason we call him Boss Man. He's great, and William Knight as Aramaki, as our sort of general in command. It's a wonderful foursome, the four of us working together, and I think we make a good sort of cyber Tokyo family.
Now, I admired Togusa because it's the future. Everyone basically has a robotic body, except for him. He's the one, he could get shot and killed. I mean, the Major, he gets an arm blown off, just reattached there, I admired it. He kind of wanted to hold on to his humanity. And I thought that was what made him unique. I mean, sure, you have the future, and everyone's got a robot body, and I don't know, it can hack into stuff. But Togusa, he's like old school. I guess he's like old school, and it's amazing, why he would not want to be a person, have a cyber body.
Well, I think Togusa at heart is deeply a romantic. He fancies himself a private detective on the case, sort of Humphrey Bogart style. I think in his imagination, he spends his time going through black and white movies like The Big Sleep and The Maltese Falcon, figuring out what's going on. And I think that's why he runs around with his revolver instead of using an automatic weapon. There's a certain sort of almost traditional Japanese aesthetic about him. The idea of the old Zen ways are the best. But he's also got another reason why he stays human. He's got a wife and a kid, and I think he enjoys the life of the physical body. That's, I think, important to him to have that kind of experience. I'm not sure his family life would be the same if he were completely robotically replaced. I mean, one of the reasons why Bato and the Major have complete physical body replacements is because they're war machines. Their whole idea is to go out and fight in battles. They're sort of tanks on two legs. And that's not Togusa's life. He doesn't want to be a tank. He wants to be a father, and he wants to be a husband, and he wants to live his life with them. But he also wants to help out and be the guy who can figure stuff out. So that was one of the best things about the first television series, was when he starts to figure out the Laughing Man, or he thinks he started to figure out the Laughing Man, and he keeps coming to the Major and saying, Major, I think I figured this thing about it, and this thing about it. And the Major's like, great, do some more digging, do some more good detective work there, detective. That's sort of his modus operandi.
Our next question is, how did you feel when you heard that Initial D was getting redubbed by Funimation? Also, how did you feel about the scriptwriters making it more American, i.e. Chloe instead of Iketani, Iggy instead of Itsuki, and the change of the awesome Eurobeat soundtrack to mediocre hip-hop?
Well, I assume this is not the dub that I worked on.
I believe so, because it was redubbed by Funimation, so I believe.
Well, this is the first I've heard of it.
Oh. Well,
I was not aware that Funimation was redubbing it, and I didn't even know that they had gotten the show. We did Initial D a long time ago. We did it at Studiopolis, and we also Americanized the names. My character's name in the dub was Cole, but I believe his original name was Iketani, so we were already Americanizing it when we did it here in Los Angeles. So if Funimation has gotten it and decided maybe they want to stick with the Americanized version that we established, or maybe they want to do something different, I don't know. It's their property now, so they don't have to answer to me necessarily. They have to answer to the fans and see what the fans would like out of the show. But I was unaware that they were redubbing it. If they are, okay. Dub licenses, well, the license for a show when it's released here in America expires after a certain amount of time, and the way the contracts are written now, the dub reverts back to the original licensing company. So if a company like, Bondi decides to allow an American company to license it and release it, and that American company makes a dub, when that American company's license expires, the dub goes back to Bondi in Japan. So then if Funimation licenses it, they don't have access to that dub. So they either have to pay to get that dub to put it on the disc, or they have to make their own. And sometimes they decide, for whatever reason, they're going to make their own dub. So I have no idea. I hope it goes well for them.
Well, his last question is, do you like voicing Shizuo? And forgive me if I pronounce this wrong. Durarara.
In Durarara.
Durarara.
Yes, yes, I like playing Shizuo a lot. He's fantastic in terms of heavies. Being the strongest man in Ikebukuro is quite wonderful. He's something that I get called on to play a lot, which is the character that is just unabashedly raw, emotional, and angry, furious. Sometimes it seems like actors won't give themselves permission to play a character that is utterly furious. But I have no problem with that, as anyone who's watched my Alucard performance can attest to. So I love playing Shizuo. I love it especially because Durarara is really a fantastic show. It's so well crafted. You get to watch the story from all these different angles, which really requires a lot on the writer's part to be able to make this entire jigsaw puzzle fit together so well. And they do really a masterful job of it. So we've recorded up to about episode 18, I believe. And of those 18 episodes, really cool stuff has gone down in that show. So I'm a big fan of Durarara, and I think Shizuo is a good part for me in the show, and I'm quite happy to play him.
BearcastRadio.com. This is the Dennis Daniels Show. We have got Crispin Freeman on the air. If you have a question, head over to our IM at DJ Bearcast. Hit us up at twitter.com/ATExplosion. Or head over to HaruhiSuzumiya.net and drop off a question in the Crispin Freeman on Dennis Daniels Show topic. Our next question is, what was your favorite part on working with Haruhi Suzumiya, and do you like your character of Kyon?
I do like my character of Kyon. I like him a lot. He's a lot of fun. I also think that Haruhi is interesting because it has this sort of anthropomorphized view of the universe, meaning that the universe exists because Haruhi says it does. It's a conversation that Kyon has with Itsuki at one point on the show when they're in a cab together. So this idea that somehow Haruhi is creating her own reality is very interesting to me, and I think that's a really great sort of sci-fi premise in a way. I think the show is very sci-fi in that way. And it's a lot of fun to play a guy who doesn't suffer fools. It's quite satisfying. You get to be sort of the deadpan character who gets to call people out on all of their silly stuff. So playing Haruhi is a lot of fun.
Do you by chance have a favorite episode from the first series?
I think my favorite episode from the first series is the episode where they play the computer game against the computer club, and they're all playing that virtual space game together. I really like that episode just because I'm a gaming geek myself, and so it's always funny to me to watch how people's personas change when they're playing a game and when they're not playing a game. And also because I'm a big fan of the Yuki character, and I really like seeing her sort of step up and into her own skin. That it's the first time that Yuki sort of expresses desire. She wants to win this game. It's very important to her to win this game. And I think Kyon finally realizes that Yuki has her own wants in her life and sort of encourages that. So I think that's incredibly charming. So that's probably my favorite episode from the first series.
I saw it too. I felt bad for Mikuru because she had these little kitties as in her little squadron, and she was just freaking out. She's scared, and she's coming to the left, coming to the right. She didn't know what to do.
Well, Mikuru freaks out a lot.
But it's like Haruhi said, it's a moe point.
It's true.
I like moe. I don't know why. Why did you start your Animé Mythology presentations, and would you ever come to Ireland to do it?
Well, I started my mythology presentations because I sort of wanted to raise the level of discussion that I was experiencing when I was going to conventions. I first started going to conventions back in, I want to say like 98 or 99, as a guest, and I started getting the same questions over and over again, which were, what's it like to be a voice actor? Who's your favorite character? What do you think about this show? And those are all wonderful and perfectly valid questions. But when you've answered them for a decade, you start to want to maybe talk about something else in addition to that. And so I realized there were the two things that I most wanted to talk about with the fans were either how to break into the industry, how do I work in this industry that I care about, and why do I love these stories so much, and why do I spend so much time dressing up as the characters. So I basically came up with two different things that I do. One is my voice acting workshops, which I've done at different conventions and whatnot, where you actually get up and try your hand at voice acting, and I can try to show you what it takes to work as a professional voice actor and answer your questions about the industry. And then my Animé Mythology presentations, which is sort of unpacking why these stories appeal to you so much. Why do you keep dressing up as a Jedi? And how the mythology underneath the story is affecting you psychologically, and the wisdom that it's trying to impart, and whether you're sort of incorporating that wisdom or not. And I find that when you are more aware of it, it's easier to incorporate it into your life and actually go on the hero journey yourself. So that's sort of the reason why I started doing the mythology presentations, because it was something that fascinated me. And in terms of me coming and doing them someplace else, it's basically the same rule as if you want me to come to a convention. You just have to have the convention or the university or whoever invite me. They have to sort of contact my agent or me and say, hey, we'd like you to come to this convention. If it's a convention, they need to contact my agent because my agent handles all of my convention appearances. And if it's a university, probably best to just contact me directly on my website. And my agent's information is also on my website. And then if we can work out the details with my agent and come to an agreement on my appearance, then I will come and do my presentation. But I think it's presumptuous of me to call up a convention and say, hey, you really want me as a guest. That's sort of crashing their party, in my opinion. If they'd like me to come, they can invite me. And if they don't want me to come, I don't want to try to knock on their door and say, hey, please invite me to the party. That's, I'm a busy guy. I got stuff to do, and I usually wait for someone to invite me.
Well, Crispin, I don't know who wouldn't want you at a convention. I mean, you're a hot commodity right now. And I'm not just saying that. Maybe you should head over to the University of Cincinnati and do this presentation. I get a front row seat. I get there days in advance to see it.
Well, if there's someone there who can organize guest speakers and whatnot, please put them in touch with me.
I just might have to. Do you have any idea what the hell is up with the characters in Revolutionary Girl Utena?
Yes, Revolutionary Girl Utena. That's one of my favorite series of all time. I think it's one of the most original series ever made. And actually, I talk about that show in depth in my third mythology presentation, which is on mystics, priestesses, and warrior women. That presentation is all about the female hero journey. What is specifically the female classical hero journey? Because most of the time when you read about classical hero journeys, or if you're familiar with Joseph Campbell's work on The Hero with 1,000 Faces, most of the time they're talking about the male-female hero journey, the sort of Luke Skywalker type of hero journey. And very rarely does anyone talk about the female hero journey. And so I really wanted to explore that. And when you're dealing with female hero journeys and sort of self-actualization, there's no show that I think appeals to me more on that subject than Revolutionary Girl Utena. Revolutionary Girl Utena, I think, is a fantastic exploration of sort of all sorts of different Jungian archetypes and different aspects of your psyche doing battle to try to find a wholeness or a oneness for the psyche. So I know that the TV series is a lot easier to follow than the movie. The movie is sort of this really compressed, compact metaphor, and it's so psychedelic that it is impossible to take the movie literally. You must read it as a metaphor. And so in my presentation, the end of the presentation is basically me unpacking the movie of Revolutionary Girl Utena, so you can sort of understand what's going on underneath it metaphorically.
Well, we have a connection question to that from Vic. He wants to know, what kind of anime mythology aspect can you identify in Haruhi, if there are any?
I'm not sure that Haruhi works on a mythological level. It works more on a sci-fi level. And what I mean by that is that mythology tends to deal with the mystical, whereas sci-fi, especially modern sci-fi, which is heavily influenced by things like Star Trek, tends to deal not with the mystical, but with the ethical. So in Star Wars, you're dealing with the mythical, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And it's actually, many would argue, more of a fantasy than a sci-fi. And so you have a guy swinging a sword and using this mystical power known as the Force. Unfortunately, Lucas sort of ruined that in Episode 1, 2, and 3. He reduced it to some sort of strange blood test. But before 1, 2, and 3, when you're just dealing with 4, 5, and 6, ostensibly everyone had access to the Force, and it was just a matter of how strong you allowed it into you. It was very much the sort of Taoist energy of the universe. So you're dealing with mystical forces. Star Trek doesn't really do that. Star Trek is more ethical problems. We land on this planet, a society is set up a certain way, we either approve or disapprove of it ethically, and maybe we change it, or maybe the Prime Directive tells us to go away. And that's a lot of what modern sci-fi is. It tends to be more ethical and less mystical. Haruhi, I guess you could argue, has a mystical component. Where is this world coming from? Why there was this break in reality 3 years ago? And why is Haruhi somehow the creative force of the universe? So I guess you could call it mystical, but I haven't really been able to track any sort of mythological thread through it other than that premise. And that premise is a little sci-fi. That's a little bit of a sort of ideological premise. There's no great big ideological premise behind Star Wars. It's more the inflection of the life energies through the field of space and time, whereas there's very much sort of ideological premises behind things like Star Trek or Ender's Game, the famous sci-fi book Ender's Game. There's a sort of sci-fi premise behind that. So Haruhi, to me, feels more like a sci-fi premise, and I can't look at it and say, oh, clearly underneath Haruhi is this aspect of Shinto, or this aspect of Buddhism, or this aspect of Abrahamic traditions, the way that it's much easier to see that under things like superheroes and giant robots, or Knights and Dragons, which is my second presentation, because the Western dragon is a fire breather, whereas the Eastern dragon is a water bringer. And so you have very different types of ways of dealing with dragons. In Sleeping Beauty, Prince Philip has to kill the fire-breathing dragon because it represents all the powers of hell. But in Spirited Away, Chihiro, the main character, falls in love with her water dragon boy, who's the spirit of a river. So he's ostensibly good. So very different relationships culturally with the dragons, sort of east and west.
Well, speaking of Spirited Away and its creator, Hayao Miyazaki, what was it like working in Howl's Moving Castle as the Turnip Man? Turnip Man!
Yeah, Turnip Head was a lot of fun. It was totally random how I got onto Howl's Moving Castle. A woman who was working at my agency, who is no longer there, but at the time she was a young agent, and she was trying to show what she could do, and she said, well, I've got connections at Pixar. I can get you in at Pixar in different films. And, of course, Pixar usually casts sort of big-name celebrities for their main characters, but she meant sort of smaller characters, secondary characters. And I said, well, that's great. Pixar is actually dubbing this Miyazaki film called Howl's Moving Castle. Can you get me in on that? And that sort of took her back because she didn't know anything about Miyazaki. And she said, well, I'll try. And then, I don't know, probably a couple months later, she gave me a call and said, well, the guys at Disney are listening to your demo on your website. And I can't promise anything, but, it's for Howl's Moving Castle, so maybe something might happen. I said, okay. And about 2 hours later, I got a call back from her, and she said, well, that was easy. Show up tomorrow in the Disney lot at 10 a.m. You're going to play either a soldier or a prince. Okay. So I drove on the Disney lot the next morning and walked down Mickey Mouse Lane and took a ride on Goofy Drive and walked into the ADR studio, and they said, yeah, we've already cast a soldier, but we've got this prince character who looks like a girl, but he's a boy, and he spends most of the time as a turnip. Do you know what to do with him? And I said, yes, I know what to do with him. Just roll the video. We're good. Let's record this.
Now, my memory is a bit fuzzy on it. When he was the Turnip Head, did he have any lines, or was it just near the end?
No, just near the end. He is silent as the Turnip Head Scarecrow character through most of the film. It's only when he, spoilers, it's only when he transforms at the end that he gains a voice.
What the important thing to remember is you got to be in a Miyazaki movie.
Yes, it was actually, I've been in 2 now. I was also in Ponyo.
Ponyo.
Yep, I played some of the background voices in Ponyo as well.
That was the one with the goldfish with the girl, right?
Right.
Yeah, that was actually based on a true story. Down here in Mill Creek, a fish came out of the water and walked like a man. It's a continuous joke I make about Mill Creek because it's so polluted. Yeah. this guy is just not that funny. Our next question, and this is from Jesse Kuhn. Do you prefer, and these are pairings, Kyon and Yuki, or Kyuki, Kyon and Haruhi, or Kyaruhi, or Kyon and Mikuru, which would be Kyokuru?
Wow, that's a lot of composite words there. What do I prefer? I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious from the first season that Kyon is attracted to Haruhi, so I certainly would not want to make Kyon go with someone he doesn't like. But that's Kyon. That's not me. If I had to choose someone out of the three girls, I think I prefer Yuki. Yuki's more my speed.
What?
I'm not sure. Haruhi's not really my kind of girl, and Mikuru's very nice, but she's not really my kind of girl either.
Oh,
so,
how could you not like Mikuru?
I like her a lot. I'm just not sure I'd want to date her.
Well, this is me. She's kind of underage, so maybe adult Mikuru. Maybe Mikuru from the near future, maybe. But not. Don't hold me to that, though.
Okay.
Our next question is from Jay Shea, and I don't know how to approach this. What would Crispin Freeman do for a Klondike bar?
Many, many things. I don't know. What would I do for a Klondike bar?
Maybe we could reword that and have one of the many characters you've done answer that for us. We want to try that? Could we try it?
What would I do for a Klondike bar? If Alucard wanted a Klondike bar, he'd probably rip your head off.
John, give him the Klondike bar. Give him the Klondike bar. Is that how we're going to sound when we get our head ripped off?
I don't know.
Oh, jeez.
Well, actually, it'll probably sound more like...
Yeah, like
there goes our head.
Yeah. And then we'll have the 5 seconds to go, oh, son of a bitch, he ripped our head off. All right, Jay, there you got a question. Now, from Tom Rules the Universe, do you spend time thinking about how your characters think and behave in general, or do you just focus on what they are doing in a particular moment when you are recording?
How my characters behave in general. See, that's the thing, is that people like to separate plot and character, but they're not really separatable. That's probably not a word. But you really can't separate plot and character, because plot reveals one's character, and character is what helps you decide what to do with the plot. So it's hard for me to think of a character outside of whatever story they are a part of, because it is the story that reveals to me what that character is all about. So, case in point, when working on Hellsing, we did the Hellsing TV series a while back, and then we're doing Hellsing Ultimate, which is sort of a reboot of the show. Now, Alucard in Hellsing and Alucard in Hellsing Ultimate are actually slightly different characters. They sort of have the same overall agenda, but because the plot is slightly different from show to show, it reveals different aspects of Alucard's character. In Hellsing Ultimate, we get to see more of Alucard's whimsical side, which we didn't really see that much of in the original TV series. So when I'm working on Alucard, I don't think in general what would Alucard do. I think, what is Alucard doing in this show right now? Because I need to stay true to this story right now, and I need to make sure that Alucard is believable in this story right now. If I tried to take the version of Alucard that we did in the TV series and shoehorn him into the Ultimate OVA series, it wouldn't fit. There would be lines that would fall flat because I'm not dealing with Alucard as he is in this moment. So usually my goal as an actor is first to find out what's driving a character overall, sort of what's their overall agenda, and then to stay in the moment, sort of scene to scene, what do they want in this scene? A classic example of this was Witch Hunter Robin. Usually when I play a new character, I try to get the show and watch some of it before I go in to get a feel for the character. And usually I can watch about 4 or 6 episodes of the show and sort of understand where the character's coming from and run with it. But not with Witch Hunter Robin. I watched the first 4 or 6 episodes, and I could tell that Amon, the character that I was cast as, had some issue, but I couldn't tell what it was. And it didn't seem to be what it normally is about a woman. In Last Exile, I figured it out pretty quick. I figured out that Alex Rowe's problem was he had a problem about a woman. But Amon didn't seem to have a problem about a woman or a girlfriend or a lost lover or something. So I kept going, and I ended up having to watch all the way to episode 24 of 26 to find out really what was driving Amon, what was the sort of itch that he had to scratch as a character. And once I understood that, then I could go back to the beginning and play him with authority because I really understood what was making him tick. So that's usually the most important thing that I need to figure out. And then once I figured out what makes a character tick, then it's a matter of playing him truthfully in the moment.
Do you ever watch your own work back when it's complete and released on DVD?
Yes, I do. I actually try to whenever I can because as an actor, you do your thing in the booth and you think, "Oh, that was really good. I knocked it out of the park on that one." And then you go and you watch it and you go, "Oh, wow, that didn't work the way I thought it was going to work. Let me recalibrate a little bit." Also, conversely, there have been times when I've done something and I go, "Oh, that was lame, wasn't it? Really? You like that? You thought that was good?" And then I'll watch it later and go, "Oh, yeah, that really works. Oh, okay, never mind. I was overthinking it." So for me, it's a good radar calibration system to go back and say, yeah, I see how that worked, and then to be able to use that in the future on new shows.
Okay.
I mean, hopefully a cook eats the food that they cook, or otherwise they wouldn't know if their cooking was good.
And this is his last question, and this is a hypothetical question, and this is some pretty deep philosophical crap. So you might want to sit down, put on your thinking helmet for this one.
Because Lord knows I haven't been deeper philosophical yet.
Yeah, did you give him the Klondike bar? Yeah, gave him the Klondike bar. Okay. God shows up before you and gives you a choice. You can either be celibate for the rest of your life and continue voice acting, or never voice act again and have a sex life. Sex or voice acting, which do you pick?
Well, that's a hell of a Faustian bargain there. I'm not sure why this divinity would do this, but if it had to... I think I could let go of voice acting. I mean, that seems a little silly, but my life and the experience of my life is more important than any occupation I might be engaged in. There's many things that interest me that I can do, and I certainly do more than just voice act. So if they said, well, you can't do this one occupation, or otherwise we will make your life very uncomfortable and undesirable, then I would say, no, please, I'd like to continue my life. I like my life. It's nice.
Yeah, but that's the only way I see that happening is if Haruhi does it. Go, clap, no more voice acting, or clap, no more sex. That seems like a really, really weird question, but we promised these kids we'd ask these questions because that's
all right. Now I get to ask you a question.
Sure.
Why did you decide to do this radio show?
Well,
what inspired you to start the Dennis Daniel radio show?
God, wow. Well, John, has that ever happened on the show?
Wow, this is a first.
It's a reversal.
You've caught us off guard.
Caught us with our pants down, so to speak. Well, our father, Dennis Daniel, the original Dennis Daniel, but I'm not a junior, so don't ask why I'm not a junior. So that's a long story I could go into later. You know, a lot of his young life, he was a in-studio DJ like us. You know, he travels around. You know, he's a professional DJ. He goes around playing all these weddings and gigs and. Yeah,
I'm not sure if you're familiar with any of the radio stations here in Cincinnati, but there is a local rock and roll radio station. 102.7 WEBN. Our father was a DJ, early morning DJ in the 70s at WEBN.
So you guys are brothers?
Yes.
Oh, excellent.
Yes, we're a very powerful duo, like the Hearts,
dynamic duo,
or the Dudleys, or the Edge and Christian, or something like that.
Absolutely, but yeah, our father, he's had a very extensive history. You know, radio. Just music in general, so things like that. I feel like that kind of has influenced us to do what we do today.
And I've been doing radio for about 3 years now. John's finishing his first year in radio, and we feel like it runs in the blood. That it's a family tradition, you know, or a family thing in the genes. You know, like we were born to be on the radio.
Gotcha. And so you guys both started working as radio DJs once you got to college?
Well, I started in 2008, and my brother started this past January.
Yeah.
And ironically, his first show was an interview with Eric Stewart, and he was hilarious during the show.
It was fantastic.
Because, it was his first show ever. He didn't know what he was doing, but he's come so far now, and I'm proud of him. And we're hoping that he's going to be the innovator of Bearcast Radio for 2011.
That would be nice. That would be nice.
So what is it about being a radio DJ that appeals to you so much?
I've got this outgoing personality, that a lot of people. I'm kind of like Haruhi, and that's why I compare me and John. He's the Kyon to my Haruhi, and I've been outgoing. I've been rambunctious most of my life, and I wanted to turn that energy into an outlet where I could make a career out of it. So, since my background I have a little bit of background with the radio, I heard about a radio station and I auditioned, and boom, the All Taste Explosion was born. It was a humble little show in the mornings, and it grew. It grew. We've really picked up the pace as of late October 2009. We're rolling along. We're getting all these great guests. I mean, if you've checked our website at all, we've had quite an extensive list of guests. They range from Pat Fraley to Eric Stewart, Frank Ferrante, Little Karibo. We even had John Cena on the show, which is just shows you that we are just becoming this juggernaut of internet radio.
So have you guys, is the idea of becoming a voice actor ever something that you've thought of in your future, or are you more comfortable being a radio personality?
I have been told by a lot of people that I should try to be a voice actor, but I feel like I sound like I'm stuck in this pubescent voice that I cannot seem to shake or anything. I'm 23 years old and I still sound like I'm 14, and I don't know why. I mean, I really would love to be a voice actor, after some of my heroes like Tom Kenny or Scott McNeil or even you or Pat Fraley, some of these guys who have made careers, who have become icons in the anime industry. But to be honest, I just don't know if I could cut my teeth with just this crazy kid voice.
Gotcha. I ask because, obviously I say that the majority of people who become voice actors come from theater and radio, and I know most of the ones that came from theater, but I'm not as familiar with the people who started as radio people. So it's interesting to get your perspective on it and to see how you think about it, because I did not start in the radio. I started in the theater, so I know how theater people think, but I don't necessarily know how radio people think. So it's interesting to get your guys' perspective from that side of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel, like making the transition to voice acting, I feel like radio personnel, I'm trying to think of how I want to put this. Radio personnel, they have, I guess, sort of say, the outgoing personality or, the familiarity with, talking to the public, maybe not necessarily in person like you do in theater, but, behind the microphone. So I feel like radio personnel could make that transition as well, along with theater, anybody who comes from a theater background. Personally, I'm not an anime fan. I mean, as you may have, noticed, I, haven't really chimed in a whole lot on this interview. I'm actually a criminal justice major.
Gonk, gonk.
So, I mean, the radio to me, this is more of a hobby. But I can definitely see how, having a background in radio or having a background in theater or acting or, anything like that definitely could lead or influence somebody to go into the career of voice acting. Now, personally, I do not see myself entering that career field, but I can definitely see the bridge between, radio and theater and voice acting.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
like I said, I'd love to do this, but to be honest, I wouldn't even know where to start with voice acting. I mean, do you have some pointers or some advice you might be able to give me?
Well, the first thing is becoming an actor, and that's really that is something that a lot of people act as sort of mysterious. How does one become an actor? It's sort of like, how does one become a writer? By doing it. The easiest way that I can think of describing the acting process is what one of my voiceover coaches said. It's playing pretend. But you're playing pretend so fully and so believably that we're willing to pay you for it. That's what actors do. And every actor has their own technique of doing that and their own way towards it. But in the end, you're playing pretend as that character, so much so that we sympathize and identify with you. Or if you're the villain, we vilify you and hate you. to the point where we enjoy the experience. And in terms of getting acting experience, Lord knows there's plenty of things around most anybody. Theater is what I usually recommend, not only because it gives you good vocal chops, but because it tends to be cheaper to do theater than to, say, make a film. It's more low budget, and so there's more opportunities for you to practice over and over again. And it's good to get up in front of people and do stuff. That's how you work out your performance skills, and you can figure out whether people like your stuff immediately, as opposed to waiting for a film to go through months and months of post-production and editing before you can find out what the audience thinks. The feedback loop's much faster, so you can prove your acting more quickly. Also improvisational acting, improv games, that stuff is vital as a voice actor especially, because voice acting is sort of instant acting. It's sort of just add water and go. Here's 5 or 10 lines of a character, and maybe here's a quick drawing that I did on the back of a napkin. Be brilliant. And so you have to make a lot of very quick but very committed decisions about how to make the character come to life. And when you're in the recording booth, they may want you to go in many different directions very quickly. And that's what improv really teaches you. So acting, improv, and then vocal training, which is what I really lean on a lot to keep myself healthy and to give myself longevity. Not everyone that I know of as a voice actor can come back and revisit a character they did 13 years ago and still sound the same. It was a concern of mine with Zelgadis. I was like, ooh, maybe my voice has matured and I don't know how to make it go back there. But if you've got very good technical control of your voice, you can handle that, and you won't have done damage to your voice in the intervening years that you can't take away.
Another question that's come up, and we've talked about this with every voice actor we've interviewed, what is your view on piracy in the anime industry, and has it really affected what you can and can't start voicing?
Well, piracy has definitely impacted the anime industry. Piracy has affected every entertainment industry. It's becoming more and more difficult for people who create content, artists, writers, to get paid for that content because it's so easy to pirate it. We're about to see a landslide of piracy of books as the iPad and the Kindle become sort of very dominant ways of doing stuff, although the Kindle not so much because it's got very strict digital rights management. But certainly there's going to be an explosion of book piracy coming in the very near future. So they're going to have to deal with what the music industry dealt with in terms of music piracy. Anime is especially susceptible to piracy. And the reason is because of the demographic of the people who tend to watch anime. Films get pirated, but once you reach a certain age, usually above, 25, you don't want to spend all of your time watching films on a computer screen. You'd like to watch it on your nice big TV with your nice big sound system, hopefully with someone who is attractive by your side. That is hard to do pirate-wise. It's just inelegant. So people are willing to pay a little extra to get their Netflix or whatever, to go through legitimate channels to get their content. Anime fans tend to be younger. They tend to have very good eyesight and very strong backs, and so they are willing to hunch over a laptop for hours and hours and hours, watching a postage-sized flash version of their favorite anime for weeks on end. And I understand why. They're usually 12 to 18. They usually don't have that much disposable income, or at least they don't think they do, and they're desperate to watch these shows that they care about so much. So they're willing to pirate them in order to watch their show. And they don't think that they're doing any harm. How could they be doing harm if it's this easy to watch shows online for free? But it turns out they are doing harm. I wish they didn't have to know the harm they're doing, but unfortunately, with great power comes great responsibility. And right now, anime fandom, and fandom in general, has more power through the Internet than fandom has ever had before. And the challenge is now that people want their anime, and they want it immediately, and they don't want to have to wait for it. And so the anime companies have been bending over backwards to try to find ways to get this content to the fans as quickly as possible in the formats the fans want. But still, a couple of unruly fans will ruin it for everybody else. There was a situation where Funimation was going to start streaming some shows, anime, on their website, and the day before the shows are supposed to stream on the website, some hackers broke into the website and got the episodes a day early and started distributing them for free early. One might say, well, what's the big deal? It was just a day early. Well, it was a big deal. The Japanese got very upset. They don't like the fact that someone's stealing their content, and so they shut down the entire stream. They decided, well, we're not going to stream anything anymore. This is a bad situation. This is where things become ugly because people don't know how to interact with each other properly. And as a creator, I go, really? You couldn't wait one day? You couldn't wait 24 hours for it to stream on their website officially? You had to crack in beforehand? So a couple of really obsessive fans ruined it for everybody else. Piracy is a bad thing, and it's got to be shut down in some way or another. There's got to be ways for fans to financially compensate the artists that they love for the work that they make. Because if you don't, then you will no longer have professional artists. The definition of a professional artist is someone who gets paid for their art. If they don't get paid, and if you don't pay them for their art, they are no longer professional, they are amateurs. And I don't think we want to spend all of our time watching amateur art. If we did, when we wanted to go on a hot date, we'd take someone home and turn on YouTube. That's not terribly sexy. I think that people want professional storytellers and they want professional artists. But as long as we keep stealing the content, those professional artists won't be able to make a living, and they'll stop making the art. And we've already seen it happening in anime. We've seen company after company close their doors and shut down because there is not enough money coming in. People are not buying the DVDs, and so market forces prevail, and the company goes, well, then we're going out of business. Bye-bye. No more anime.
And that's all she wrote, kids. Now, I believe, well, these are one of our last few questions, and I believe it's important that we ask every voice acting guest we have on the show is, where are you going to be next? The con scene. Where can we catch Crispin Freeman next time?
Well, obviously I will be at the academic conference, Schoolgirls in Mobile Suits, next September in Minneapolis because I'm a regular guest there, and I think if I don't come back every year, someone might lynch me. But in terms of other conventions, I'm still in negotiations with some stuff. When I get official okay from my agent that deal has been worked out, then I usually put it up on my website. I also usually wait for the convention to put me up on their website first so I can link to the convention website. So when people say, hey, where are you going? I can say, here, check out the convention's website. So any new appearances will be listed on the news section of my website. Right now it's all just my recent appearances in 2010. But as my upcoming appearances for 2011 show up, they will all be at crispinfreeman.com.
And again, we'll have a direct link from the alltakesexplosion.com to Crispin Freeman's site. Our final question, do you have any final words you'd like to give out to all your fans, all those around the world who just say, hey, we love you, Crispin Freeman? Anything you'd like to say to them?
Yeah, I think I'd like to say thank you so much for appreciating our work. I certainly got into this industry because I wanted to make things better, and I wanted to tell good stories, and I wanted people to have a good time. I wanted to throw a good party, and that's basically what artists do. Artists try to throw a good party and invite as many people to come along and enjoy it. And it's always wonderful to have great guests who are appreciative, guests who realize that a lot of work and effort went into making this party happen, to making this story happen. And it's wonderful to have people appreciate one's work. So thank you so much to all the fans who are so appreciative, and there are so many of you out there. I hear from you all the time. We make this stuff, or at least I make this stuff, to communicate to you guys. That is where my enjoyment comes in. The cook in the kitchen always likes being thanked. So hopefully you enjoy all the wonderful storytelling that we make for you guys.
Well, Crispin Freeman, I thank you so much for being on the show. This was an honor, and I believe we'll have to have you back on the show real time soon. It was quite a pleasure. So we'll have to have you come back on later on. So thank you for being on the show.
You bet. Thank you for having me.